1928 Corsicana.
I have no recollection of Corsicana. I think I was like 15 months when we left there.
Where did you guys go?
My dad was an entrepreneur. I mean, he went from one thing to another and traveled the oil fields in East Texas, and eventually I guess Fort Worth became our home.
So you settled down in Fort Worth?
Yeah, and he was in the scrap business in Brownwood. I mean, we were everywhere. When I got a little bit older, like when I was in high school, my folks traveled, and Mother went with him. So I would stay with one aunt or another, and it was good. I mean, the family was close, and my dad was in the scrap business and the marble table business, and I used to go with him when they had the rodeo in Fort Worth to collect the money out of the marble machines and sit on the bar. I remember that, and I guess I was then maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I remember sitting on the bar and eating peanuts. Life was simple and easy and good. And then I came in high school, before high school, in elementary school, I went to school in Dallas. I stayed with my aunt, and I went to Forest High.
Now, why did you come to school in Dallas instead of Fort Worth?
Mother's 2 sisters were here in Dallas, and I went to elementary school in Fort Worth first, but my mother was home with me then.
Right.
And he traveled a lot. So I guess I just wound up, because of the sisters, I think.
Yeah, and because of your folks doing a lot of traveling for business.
Yeah.
Do you remember your grandparents at all?
My mother's father was murdered in Fort Worth, but way before I was born. My grandmother, I remember, and she lived here in Dallas, and I don't know how old she was. I was little, and she lived on Irving Street with the streetcars, and she went out one day. She was getting on the streetcar and fell. Anyway, the streetcar ran over and cut her leg off. And so my recollection of her is in a wheelchair always. And
now, was this your mom's parents?
My mom's mother, yeah. And the father I'm named for him, so he was dead before I was.
Do you know what happened to him?
He had a store in Fort Worth, that's all I know, and he was murdered in the store.
What about your grandparents on the other side?
On the other side, my father's family was settled when they came from Russia to this country in Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa. And I really didn't know them very well because we didn't get up there that much, and see them. But that grandfather also died young, and I think he died in Russia. And the mother brought the kids over here. I barely knew her. I think I saw her maybe 3 times.
And this was
my dad's
your
parents.
Okay. How did your dad get down to Texas then from Iowa?
He was in the Army in the First World War and stationed somewhere in South Texas. And I don't know how they met, but my mother was like 14 or 15 when they got married. And my sister was born a year later. And she was like almost 9 years older than me, so we really weren't that close. But
so your dad did not go overseas during World War I?
I don't really know.
Okay. And then did he ever talk about his parents, what it was like for them to travel to this country?
The story that I remember the most of my dad he was 13, I think, when he came with a brother-in-law. And the family hadn't come yet. He came earlier. And they came into Ellis Island in New York, and he got off the train to go fill a kettle with water so they could heat water, and got lost, I think, and he missed the train. And he used to tell this story and just laugh like crazy because I guess, something that happens is funnier when you talk about it later.
Right.
But that was his favorite story. He liked to tell that, and how he finally found Ben Wolfe was the brother-in-law, and he finally found Ben Wolfe. And they went to Boston. And then his family came, and he went to Sioux City, and then he got in the Army and came to Texas.
Yeah. Did they ever talk about their family they left behind in Europe?
Not that I remember. I don't, we have since, a cousin of ours made a family tree and found out a lot of stuff about the Kalin family. That was my maiden name, Kalin. And I really didn't know or hear anything about any of them.
Now, your mom's side of the family, do you know how they came to this country?
They came through Galveston, and they settled in Ranger, Texas,
Okay.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And then they finally came to Fort Worth.
Now, do you know what year, or about what year it was when your family...
Well, I think my mother was born in 1903, and I think she was about 6 or 8. And they came on her birthday, and when the authorities asked her mother how old she was and what was her name and when's her birthday, and my grandmother, who of course spoke Yiddish,
Right.
told them her birthday's often Hanukkah, 5th and Lech, it's the 5th night of Hanukkah.
Right.
And that year, the 5th night of Hanukkah was the 25th of December. So Mother always, they put that down as her birthday, but her actual birthday was the 18th
Right.
of December. That was another favorite story. So
Talk to me about high school life. What was it like for you?
high school was fun. Everything was so easy then and slow moving, and everybody was friendly, and there wasn't a lot of prejudice in the school. I don't think in South Dallas, where we were in Forest High.
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody was good friends. I mean, we
You were a depression baby also.
also, I don't know,
Did it affect your family at all that you know of?
not that I know of. No, I was so little.
Now, World War II broke out. Do you remember that when that happened?
Yeah. I was in Boston with my aunt there. I was visiting
Okay.
on Pearl Harbor Day. And then I came back to Texas and started high school. For a while, Dad settled up in Indiana delivering house trailers. They were new then. And so we were in Elkhart, Indiana, and Goshen, Indiana, and a few other places, I think. But then they didn't want to have to drag me around. So that's when I came back to Dallas to my aunt.
Right.
And went back to Forest High. I had started there and left, and then I came back.
Now, did your folks stay in Indiana, or did they come back home too?
No, they didn't come back for a while. They stayed in Indiana for a while.
But they eventually came back?
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
And then we had a home in Fort Worth. And I went to the University of Texas when we graduated. And I went 2 years, and my dad died suddenly. And I was 18. That's the year we got married, November. Dad died in April.
Now, tell me about meeting your husband, Bob.
We were kids in school. It's not, you don't really meet somebody. It's just you're one of the kids.
Yeah. So when was it when you knew you wanted to date him?
No, we went out a few times, and then by graduation time, we were going together pretty steady. And
And this is graduation of high school you're talking about?
high school, yeah.
Okay.
And then he went to the university through the summer session. I didn't go till the fall, but we both were in Austin. And then he left to go to the Navy. And all his fraternity brothers took care of me. I really never dated anybody else hardly after that. I mean, we were
Now, when he left for the Navy, I know it was towards the end of World War II, but there was still a war going on.
Yeah.
Were you concerned at all?
As much as any teenager was then. It's so far removed. When it's not in your backyard, you don't
Right.
you don't live every minute thinking about the war. I mean, you've thought about the kids that were gone and the boys that would or would not come back and stuff like that. But when you're 14 or 15 years old, it's not that big a thing.
So when he came back, that's when you guys got married?
Yeah, he came back in the summer and took his sweet time about coming back. He made a long trip out of it.
What was that?
I know he was with a buddy and the buddy's wife from California, and they took forever to get home. I don't know, they stopped gamble and all kind of stuff. Anyway, he got home in August, I think, and we married in November.
Yeah, yeah.
He was at SMU at the time, and we married on a Thursday. It was Thanksgiving weekend, was a long weekend, so we had 2-day honeymoon in the Texas Hotel in Fort Worth. And it's been 68 years since, and our family now numbers almost, 38 or something like that now, and we're very proud of everybody.
What's the happiest time in your life?
I don't think I ever really had an unhappy time. The life kind of gets you, you have highs and lows, and the bad times are bad for a while, but everything falls into place. We've had a good life.
And what was it like for you when your children were born?
I was devoted to them. We were very close, sometimes misunderstood, but usually things go pretty well with us. Bob and I, we were so young. I mean, we grew up together and we grew old together. And young is better than old, let me tell you that, for sure. We had a good life.
What was the music you used to like to listen to?
The big band time. I mean, the music was great then, and you could understand the words.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember some of the artists?
Yeah, all of them. Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, Kay Kaiser even. I think our generation had the best growing up time, even with the war and everything. I mean, it were a lot of experiences, and the world was changing, and now it's unbelievable that you live to see the things that are going on now. I mean, it's...
Do you remember when the Iceman would come to the houses back then?
Sure. And the milkman came to the door to leave the milk, and the Iceman. Not so much the Iceman, but I do remember we lived in Brownwood, Texas, and my dad had a scrapyard there. And we lived above. We had an apartment above the office. And it was pretty rustic. I mean, I used to play on the creosote logs, that they would get ready, prepare them for the railroad and stuff. And every day was an adventure, and yet it was the same.
Now, you had a sister. Was she older than you?
She was 9 years older.
Was there something that maybe you guys did together, or just something you
Rarely. We were so far apart.
Okay. So what was it that you used to do that you would just die if your parents ever knew you were doing it?
I don't know of anything. My parents were gone so much that I never...
You just didn't get in trouble?
I tried not to. I didn't get in trouble.
Was there an invention that came along in your lifetime that you went, wow, how did we ever get along without that?
I guess everything that came again. How did I get along without television? I couldn't now. I mean...
Where were you when you first saw television?
Oh, my sister had a little set about this big. The 7-inch, 6-inch, whatever that was. And that was the first one probably that I ever saw.
Where were you when you got your first television? Were you married already?
Yeah, we had a little house in East Dallas in Parkdale. And my mother bought us then a Hoffman
Now, do you remember getting a telephone in the house, or did you guys always have one?
We had a telephone.
Was it a party line?
Yeah.
Did you listen in?
No.
Trying to find something bad. No. What was that like, sharing a telephone with neighbors?
It was just the way it was. I mean, you can't put it in any kind of perspective at all and say it was this way or it was that way, because that's the way it was. Everybody had a party line.
Yeah, that's all you knew.
Right.
Yeah. Talk to me about your involvement with the Jewish community.
Well, I always tried to be involved with, when I was younger, with the youth groups, and when I was older, I was an advisor to the B'nai B'rith youth, and we were always active at the community centers, and that's about it. In Fort Worth, we did not have Hebrew school there at the time, so I didn't get involved with that. But I went to Sunday school.
In your lifetime, you've lived through so many momentous occasions. The Great Depression, World War II, of course, the wars obviously after that, the Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, landing on the moon for the first time in '69, something good. Of course, the tragedy of 9/11. Is there something that stood out that affected you that you go, gosh, I know exactly where I was the day it happened?
I can remember where I was the day all of those things happened. I was working, actually, when Kennedy was assassinated, and I was at work. It was awful. I mean, and then when we went on that trip to New York, and everybody kept talking about Texas, the license plate and everything, you're from Texas. Oh, that's a bad place down there, you see. Did you know Jack Ruby? That was the best. He was a member of our congregation, but I didn't know him. I never even heard of him.
So this trip to New York was shortly after the assassination?
Yeah, it was. We went to the World's Fair in New York.
What was that like, the World's Fair?
It was unbelievable at that time. I mean, they had things that you didn't dream they'd ever have.
Yeah. What year was that?
64, maybe.
You and Bob have the 3 kids, 1 girl, 2 boys, 10 grandkids, 13 great-grandkids, and 2 great-grandkids on the way.
Be here this summer.
What advice does great-grandma have for the next generation?
I don't know. The world is so crazy now. It's so different. I definitely think we had the best generation. Maybe us and our kids.
Yeah.
But I worry a lot about all these kids getting born and having everybody in the world's just getting so bad. But I think about that a lot. I hope they'll be fine.
Well, thanks for doing this today.
My pleasure.
You did a great job.
Thank you.